Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What Ted Says, and I feel pumped to talk to you today about some of my favorite scenes from money laundering movies. But I'm going to teach you a little bit because everybody loves a good movie, but nothing will make the wires of your brain work faster than a complex film about the intricacies of money, business, finance, and the shady side of it all. Sit back, relax, get your popcorn. I'm going to give you some of my top movies to watch that will have you on the edge of your seat when it comes to money laundering. All right, clip 1 in Breaking Bad, Saul explains money laundering. Let's go to the clip.
Since the genius can't be bothered, today's your lucky day. Look around, kiddo.
You know you need to launder your money, right? Do you understand the basics of it? Placement, layering, integration.
So this is the deal when it really comes to money laundering and the 3 phases that people just don't know, but you have to think about. The first area that you kind of see in here is the area of placement. Like if you have dirty money, you've got to get it into the system. And the way that a lot of people get it into the system is actually buying legitimate business. So here, the whole foot massage place, it actually probably is a legitimate business, but the issue is it's where the dirty money is going into to start the business. Then you've got layering, that out of that money is being washed into the business with actual real money with real other customers. So you're mixing the dirty money with the actual non-dirty money into the business, and then ultimately in the integration, money comes out of it because it'll end up in a bank somewhere, or it'll come back out of the business, whether it's just cash, and then those dollars will get back into the system. And that's how, the dirty laundry gets dirtier.
I ain't no damn nail salon.
Does this make you wonder why there's so many nail salons and so many foot massage places in every strip mall? Now you're probably asking yourself which one's real and which is not.
IRS. If they can get Capone, they can get you.
So you have to remember in here, when you hear these kind of conversations, that there have been some famous tax cheats. It goes all the way back to the mob days of Al Capone, to the people that you see like Wesley Snipes, who actually went to jail over this. Because remember, tax avoidance is legal, but tax evasion is illegal, and that's what could get you in jail. And that's what's happening in this clip. Clip number 2, one of my favorite movies, The Wolf of Wall Street. This is where Jordan meets the Swiss banker.
Jordan Belfort.
C'est Belfort.
Nicholas has told me so much about you.
Need a bigger couch for
Yeah.
guests.
I don't understand, I'm sorry.
I'm curious about your bank secrecy laws here.
I love that. I love that scene, and you always wonder why there are so many movies and people talk about running money through countries like Switzerland, or you'll see things happen in the Cayman Islands or Bermuda, because those countries have banking laws and extradition rules that are very different. This is why you see tax havens like the Caymans, because there are certain things they may have to share and certain things they may not have to share if there is some sort of investigation. And that's why a lot of people that have that dirty money like putting it in countries where they don't have to report that kind of information to our Internal Revenue Service. Now, it can be really hard to repatriate that money back in the United States, but you even have legitimate things like Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands where you can set up and pay little to no tax and then actually legitimately repatriate that money into the United States. It's all very interesting stuff, but it is why a lot of these movies talk about places like Switzerland and Swiss banking.
Of course. Let's get down to it. What would you like to know?
Under what circumstances would you be obligated to cooperate with an FBI or U.S. Justice
Man,
Department?
that's a tricky question, right? If you're in there and you're talking to somebody ever who asks you those kinds of money, it's like, under what circumstances could I bury money in your backyard for, say, 90 days and then take it back out? Anything that starts with something sketchy like that, I always say if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's a duck, and it probably is sketchy, and you probably want to steer clear of that.
Ça dépend on what exactly?
Whether America plans to invade Switzerland in the coming months.
So check if tanks are rolling down the Rue de la Croix, huh?
Yes, Rue de la Croix.
Croix.
Croix. Not Croix, no, not Rue de la Croix.
Quoi,
This is what he
hey,
used to do back in law
chit-chat,
school.
blah, blah, blah.
Champagne, champagne.
Yeah.
Yeah, French fries, bon fruit. And that kind of stuff.
What I'm asking you, Swiss dick, is are you going to me over?
It always seems to be that case, right? People that want to money launder, well, they aren't all shits and giggles. They want to know, what are you going to do with my money? That is the truth. They want to know what you're going to do with their money. One of my favorite HBO series of all time, you really need to watch this, is The Wire. It's a pandemic, and this is a scene in here where a politician explains how lawyers actually help drug dealers launder money. Can you believe that?
I know who he is. I'm not looking for any lawyers. I'm following the money. Follow the lawyers. Levy, Brum, Silverstein, Craig. All those guys who take the high-end drug work. They don't just make money off the criminal fees.
This is the really interesting part about this, because obviously lawyers, and many of them do, like many professions, they have ethics and they have standards. But like any industry, there may be some lawyers who say, oh, well, I'll turn a cheek or two, or I'll put a blind eye to this, or if you pay me enough money, I'll make the system work another way. And given the way that the laws are, and you've seen this in many movies over time, but this is great in this clip, you may have police or detectives that are actually trying to follow the money and what's happening to it, and there are lawyers that are in the middle making it much more difficult to follow the trail of the money.
Levy routes it through who? Anyone who got a project or a game in need of cash. Developers, people looking to capitalize, elected folk like
Listen,
myself.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's no shortage of people out there that need money. And when greed hits, and believe me, this is where it happens, there are things that they may do and they don't really care what's actually happening with the money. Like, they may not ever ask their clients, like, what are you actually doing with all this money? The client's just saying, how can I get the money from here to here and not get in trouble for doing it? And someone could show them how to do it, but the lawyers could basically extricate themselves by basically saying, I don't actually know what they were doing, even though the truth is they probably knew what they were doing. So clip 4 in here is a great movie called American Made. It's a true story about a guy named Barry Seal, and about how he basically is running drugs up from Colombia and has to deal with the Nicaraguans and so much in the early Reagan years. But this is how you actually start a shell corporation to launder money.
By the summer of '82, business was a booming.
Don't you love the fact about how he uses a payphone? There's no payphones anymore. They're tracking you on your cell phone.
Okay, hold on now.
Yeah, we want to double the amount of guns we're bringing in.
Double. Next batch by Friday. Oh, hold on. Does it have to be Friday? I opened a few front corp.
So what's happening in here when you hear this term of like a front corporation is that he's actually starting what they call to be a shell corporation. In this case, it may be Royal Signs. Now, the company may actually legitimately sell some signs, but again, this is the idea of getting the money placed into the system before you layer it into the business. Because if he got that drug money of $100,000, he's not just gonna be able to go to the bank and deposit $100,000. So he's gonna slowly place that money into the business. And then as that money's placed into the business, there's going to be legitimate business in that Royal Signs. It may actually even lose money on paper, but that's how the money gets filtered through it. And so there are people that may have 20, 30, 40 corporations. And even if they are all legitimate corporations, it may be the way that they move money from one company to another. So clip number 5 in here is a scene from Casino, and they have this classic term of cooking the books, and I want you to see a little bit about how this works. It's a great movie. It's a long movie. You got to be ready to watch it for about 3 hours, but it's a great movie.
And along with making us legit comes cash.
They had so much money in there you could build a house out of stacks of $100 bills. And the best part was that upstairs the board of directors didn't know what the fuck was going on. I mean, to them everything looked on the up and up, right? Wrong. The guys inside the counting room were all slipped in there to skim the joint dry.
So what this is talking about, and this is true in a lot of businesses, and I know this doesn't feel like money laundering, but if you think about the fact of a business, let's say it's a restaurant even, and half of the money comes in cash and half comes in credit card. I know obviously today you have more credit card. The question is that cash that comes into the business, do they even report it to the IRS? Because if you don't report that cash to the IRS, essentially you're doing tax evasion. You're skimming, right? You're taking cash off the business and you're putting it in your pocket. If you and I own something like a casino that was like all cash coming in there all the time, and you can't keep track of that cash, you could tell the IRS, oh, we only made $100,000 of sales today, when the reality is you made $120,000, and this is the idea of just skimming money off the top. So this is an oldie but goodie in Tom Cruise's early days, and he did, I think, better movies than he does today. The movie called The Firm. This is actually off of a great book. The really an FBI agent explains how the mob is using the law firm to actually launder money.
Go over and sit next to the man on the bench.
We've been investigating Bendini, Lambert, and Locke for 4 years. No lawyer has ever left your law firm alive. Your law firm is the sole legal representative of the Moraldo crime family in Chicago, known as the Mafia, the mob.
I don't believe it.
They set up legitimate businesses with dirty money from drugs, gambling, prostitution. All cash, all moved offshore. You believe it. That's why you talk to Thomas A. Banks in the Caymans. That's why you got this private investigator asking questions that got him killed.
So there's a classic example in here that the people that launder money often need to have good lawyers and have that representation to deal with all of our laws legally. And the lawyers aren't going to put themselves in the middle and actually take that cash and rebate the client. But in here, they're actually legally representing the company that's using multiple shell companies, in this case, the mob, to move money. Notice most of the businesses are cash businesses, which makes sense. And that is how the money starts to get laundered in the system. So this is clip number 7. Again, another great series that I told you got to watch called The Wire. If you've never seen it, it's amazing. But this is really how the police and the IRS can use public corporate records to start to piece together where a criminal actually launders money.
Limited liability corporations. Start with the nightclub, which Barksdale owns. Look up Orlando's. By address, you match it. You see it's owned by who?
It's on Baltimore Street, right? Got it. D&B Enterprises.
Hand it over to Preps, who's gonna get off his ass and walk on over to the state office buildings on Preston Street.
Preston Street?
Corporate charter office.
Corporate who?
So this is a great example, and it actually is real, because if you went today to your state and you started to look up any corporations, they're all a matter of public records. But what might happen is if you found that nail salon, it might be owned by B&B Enterprises. And then you might say to yourself, well, who owns B&B Enterprises? And then you'll find that it's the ABC Corporation that owns B&B Enterprises. Well, who owns the ABC Corporation? Well, it's Cobzilla Corporation. You know, there's always one corporation that owns another corporation, and that's why it could be a complete game of circle when you're dealing with any sort of police or detectives that are trying to track down this money, because the really good criminals, they know how to basically move money from one company to another. This is a great example. So the cops can track down some things, but the clever criminals can often make it very difficult to find that information.
Corporate officers, shareholders, but more importantly, the resident agent on the filing, who is usually a lawyer.
So when you look at the actual legal representative, the person that's named on there, and even in some cases the secretary, the treasury, or other people, it may be other companies, there may be other relatives in there, but usually that representative, the registered representative, is always going to be the lawyer, because the lawyer is going to deal with it if questions are asked about it. So this is clip number 8, going back to Breaking Bad. Walter has too much money to launder. What do you do if you got too much money, you don't know where to put it?
This is what you've been working for.
Look, the challenge is, if you're a criminal and you have lots of cash, the challenge is how you're going to launder it. The more millions and millions of dollars you have, the harder and harder it is to actually place the money into legitimate businesses to eventually get it back out. And so it can always limit what you have in terms of how many businesses and the size of the businesses. But also today, remember, the other way that people may launder money is dealing with cryptocurrency. And this is why, because it's an unregulated asset and still, I believe, much harder to track, there may be ways that people may give cash in exchange for people giving them part of their cryptocurrency, and then the cryptocurrency may get moved back into cash. So you're gonna see more of that going forward. Okay, this is clip 9, one of my favorite series on HBO, The Sopranos. I gotta go back and watch that sometime soon. And this is where Tony hides his money.
Don't try at the beauty parlor.
So everybody loves cash, and this is just another way that you'll see people hide money. Do people really bury their money in their backyard? Absolutely, and sometimes they'll hide it inside their walls, or you'll see movies where it's inside of a Maxwell house or a Savarin can. It can happen all over the place, but sometimes people will also take this cash and they'll try to find somebody that has gold or other precious metals, or a watch, for example. Think about a pawn store where I give them $10,000, they give me a watch, I've got that watch now I sell that watch, I get legitimate money, and these are other ways to launder smaller bits of money, not bigger bits of money. So this is clip number 10, another one from the Wolf of Wall Street. What happens if you gotta take a lot of cash abroad? How's that gonna work?
When it gets here, I'll give you a call and you'll come pick it up.
Well, we don't work for you, man.
Sweetheart, you have my money taped to you. Okay, technically you do.
The next day, Aunt Emma flew to Geneva. $2 million in cash in her carry-on, which in the big picture was a drop in the Swiss bucket. Because the following month, over the course of 6 round trips, Chantal's family and friends smuggled in over $20 million in cash without even a hiccup.
This is an interesting clip, but I don't think you get away with it anymore, but they used to basically put their cash in their carry-on so they didn't look through it if they checked their bags in, and the x-ray machines were not near as good as they are today, but the x-ray machines, you're gonna have a lot harder time putting that carry-on and they just see a wad of cash. You might get away with a few gummy bears that come from Colorado, but not for a wad of cash if you take it through the airport. So this is clip 11 in here, Jack Ryan, shadow recruit. This is from a compliance officer who notices irregularities, and I want to talk to you about the role of compliance after you see this clip.
You want to go to Moscow?
I think we have to. They're unnamed, uncategorized, scattered all over the world. They're hidden accounts, Rob. These are just the ones I managed to find.
How did you find them?
You pay me to look.
Not to look that hard. Jesus H. Christ. You're the compliance officer. It's your call. But can I ask one thing? Don't screw up the most lucrative partnership this company has. Please.
So this is really important because, you know, in a compliance role, compliance is generally separate from the business people in the company, i.e. the president, the vice president, and compliance is supposed to look for these trends. Like, what if an account opens up and there's somebody who wires in $5 million into a legitimate brokerage account at a Charles Schwab or a Fidelity, and then a day later they want to wire it back out? That could be a way that people are trying to clean money through the system. So validating things like, you know, the suitability profile, validating official government IDs or things like that can be very important to make sure that you don't have criminal activities happening in every system. It's why they ask you for that information. You know, early in my career, these are great movies, and you'd be like, oh, well, Ted, is all this real or is it fantasy land? Look, when I was in my career and I worked for a big corporation, I will not name, a Fortune 100 company, I got a call one day from a car dealership, and it said, what do you know about cars basically being bought and given to NFL football players that are going to be drafted in the upcoming first round? And I thought, I don't know what you're talking about. And said, well, there's a signature from your company, not by me, from your company on documents in here, and we keep on getting cars that we're giving to future NFL prospects. And I said, what? I don't know anything about that. So I called my compliance department. There was some ghost that came out from the compliance department, dug into it, and it turns out there were 2 financial advisors who were essentially taking a stamp, I don't know how they got it, of a corporate secretary of a Fortune 100 company, stamping the approval of those cars, using their money to actually pay for the cars in lieu of hoping of getting the business from these future NFL players. And they got away with it for about a year, and then they got caught, fired, and put in jail. One other one that was super interesting in here is that I had to actually deliver checks to a client who died. And the reason that the client died is that there was an advisor who decided to actually make fake statements and send those statements to the clients, and they actually embezzled the money out of the client's account. They took all that money and they went to Las Vegas, and when they went to Las Vegas, they lost all the money, so they were in the cover-up. They kept sending statements after statements after statements, but the client finally caught them. And when the client caught him and said, I'm gonna turn you into the police, that person killed the client. Years later, I had to actually go deliver checks to the family. It was awful. But anytime things like that happen, there's a reason, there's compliance and oversight, because you're trying to catch those things and make sure that clients and consumers are protected and you don't have the villains who are trying to steal the money. And the last clip that I want to show you is one more from The Wire. Again, such a great series. And this is where Prop Joe, that's a character in The Wire, sets Marlo up with a sketchy philanthropist.
I got too much money.
Son, believe me, you ain't alone. What to do with this shit we sell ain't no thing. In Baltimore, dope and coke sell themselves. But the money that come back, ain't enough mattresses, is it now?
You got any ideas?
A few. If you ask him. He one of about 3 I like to give money to. Help with his good works and all that.
Good works?
Oh, he down with all kind of missionary work going on down in the islands. You know, building a church for some folk, a schoolhouse for some other folks, all kind of good shit like that. And what else y'all building?
The hospital.
Hospital, yeah. Except they've been building that mess for about 10 years now and nothing ever actually get finished.
How you gonna clean my money?
So one of the things to remember here is we've talked about legitimate businesses during this What Ted Says episode, but there's also a lot of 501c3s or nonprofit organizations, and sometimes you ask yourself, is this even legitimate? Remember George Costanza with the Human Fund, again, if you're a Seinfeld fan. But some charities, they can be sketchy, and sketchy charities and nonprofits are just another way that people launder money, and in general, because it's a nonprofit, sometimes it's under the radar even more than what you would consider to be a for-profit business. And if the 501c3 is set up in the right fashion, it can be very difficult to find that money. So what do you think? Are you now an expert in money laundering? I hope you like this list. I hope you enjoyed the movies. You should watch them all. They're all really pretty cool. And of course, please subscribe to the channel, share with your friends, turn on the notifications button. Thanks as always for watching What Ted Says.